We're a separate encampment, but we're part of the same charity. So there's rules for all of us.
Because I didn't cause any problems, right?
Yeah.
Like I get as little friction as possible on both ends.
Ohio's homelessness crisis is spiraling out of control. Shelters are overflowing beyond capacity. Families are teetering on the edge of losing everything. And thousands of children face nights without a safe place to call home. This is not just a statistic to glance over. It's a national emergency unfolding in communities across the state. The lack of affordable housing, stagnant wages, and insufficient social services have combined to push more Ohioans into desperate situations every day. This video will take you inside the realities of homelessness in Ohio, revealing stories of struggle, resilience, and hope. If you're ready to face these hard truths and join the fight for real change, please like, share, and subscribe. Your voice amplifies the call for action and brings us closer to solutions. Together, we can make a difference and ensure that no Ohioan is left behind without shelter or support. Homelessness in Ohio. A growing crisis. The homelessness situation in Ohio has worsened significantly in recent years. According to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, over 759 people were recorded as homeless on a single night in 2024. This figure marks a 7.4% increase compared to the previous year, highlighting a growing challenge for the state's social services and housing infrastructure. Approximately 80% of the homeless population in Ohio finds temporary shelter in designated facilities, such as shelters or transitional housing. However, the remaining 20% live in much harsher conditions, including sleeping under bridges, in parked vehicles, or on the streets. These unsheltered individuals face extreme exposure to the elements and increased vulnerability. Moreover, many people experiencing homelessness remain invisible in official counts. Individuals who sleep in cars, with friends or family, or in makeshift tents are often excluded from statistics, which means the true scale of homelessness in Ohio is likely even higher than reported. The surge in homelessness is placing immense pressure on affordable housing and social support systems, particularly in central Ohio's urban areas, with demand outpacing available resources. Many vulnerable individuals struggle to find stable living conditions. What do you think are the biggest barriers to solving homelessness in Ohio? How can communities better support those without permanent homes? These questions must be addressed as we continue. Next, let's explore the unique characteristics of the homeless population in Ohio. Characteristics of the homeless population in Ohio. The landscape of homelessness in Ohio is diverse and complex, affecting different groups in unique ways. Young adults aged 18 to 24, particularly those from the LGBTQ community, face a disproportionately high risk of homelessness. Many are forced to leave home due to family rejection, discrimination, and domestic violence. This vulnerable group often struggles to find safe shelter and support, highlighting the urgent need for targeted services. Another growing segment is the elderly population, which has seen a 36% increase in homelessness within just 1 year. Fixed incomes, such as Social Security, often fail to keep pace with rising living costs, leaving many seniors without stable housing. This trend raises serious concerns about how society supports its aging members who are most at risk. Single-parent households, especially women, represent another vulnerable group among the homeless in Ohio. These individuals face the daunting challenge of balancing child care responsibilities with soaring housing costs. Without adequate assistance, many are forced into precarious living situations that can affect both their well-being and that of their children. Veterans also continue to struggle with homelessness, hampered by complicated bureaucratic processes and a shortage of affordable housing options. Despite their service, many find themselves trapped in a cycle of instability that demands both policy reform and community support. Racial disparities are stark in Ohio's homeless population, especially in Franklin County. Black individuals make up 53% of the homeless, despite being only 26% of the local population. Meanwhile, white individuals account for 35% of the homeless population. These imbalances reflect systemic inequities that extend beyond housing alone. How can communities better address the specific needs of these diverse groups? What role should local governments and nonprofits play in closing the gap? Rising crisis. Children and families experiencing homelessness in Ohio. Homelessness among children and families in Ohio is becoming an increasingly urgent issue. Since 2020, child homelessness has surged by 10%, and family homelessness has increased by 11%. These alarming statistics reveal a vulnerable population growing at an unsettling rate. During the 2023-24 school year, more than 25,500 students in Ohio were identified as homeless. This number reflects not only a housing crisis, but also a broader social challenge that disrupts education, emotional well-being, and long-term development. Children experiencing homelessness face numerous obstacles beyond the lack of shelter. Frequent relocations and unstable living conditions contribute to chronic absenteeism. Ohio's homeless students miss school at a rate nearly double the state average, around 59%. This educational disruption severely limits their opportunities, perpetuating cycles of poverty and hardship. Many families rely on temporary solutions like overcrowded shelters, motels, or couch surfing, which often goes unrecorded in official counts, masking the true scale of the problem. Single-parent households, particularly those led by women, face an even greater struggle, balancing childcare and flexible work schedules, and soaring housing costs creates immense stress. For these families, homelessness means navigating daily uncertainty while trying to provide basic needs and stability for their children. The emotional toll on both parents and children can lead to lasting trauma and mental health challenges. Support systems, though present, often fall short of meeting the demand. Shelter capacity is limited, and many services are stretched thin. Hidden homelessness, where families live temporarily with friends or relatives, further complicates outreach and resource allocation. Addressing the homelessness crisis for children and families requires a multifaceted approach that ensures stable housing, educational support, and mental health resources. Understanding these realities is essential for meaningful change. To truly tackle homelessness in Ohio, we must delve deeper into its underlying causes. Next, we will explore the root causes of homelessness in Ohio, unpacking economic, social, and policy factors fueling this growing crisis. Root causes of homelessness in Ohio. Homelessness in Ohio is a multifaceted crisis rooted in a combination of economic pressures, housing shortages, and systemic failures. One of the most significant drivers is the sharp increase in housing costs. Over the past several years, rent prices in many Ohio cities have surged by approximately 32%, while wages have only risen about 8%. This growing gap forces many residents to spend more than 30% of their income on housing, the threshold that defines housing cost burden. For low-income families and individuals, this means sacrificing other essentials like food, healthcare, or transportation just to keep a roof over their heads. Compounding this issue is the severe shortage of affordable housing. Ohio currently faces a deficit of over 264,000 affordable rental units, meaning there are far fewer affordable homes than families who need them. For every 100 extremely low-income households, fewer than half have access to affordable housing. This scarcity creates intense competition for limited units, leaving many without options and pushing them toward homelessness. Moreover, the waiting list for housing vouchers, designed to help bridge this gap, are often years long or stagnant, delaying critical assistance for thousands. The legal and policy environment also contributes to the problem. Eviction filings have risen steadily in Ohio's urban centers, disproportionately affecting renters with limited legal knowledge or access to representation. The eviction process often prioritizes landlords, and tenants are frequently forced out with little chance to contest or negotiate. Meanwhile, policies aimed at addressing housing shortages sometimes face political resistance, lack adequate funding, or fail to address the root causes comprehensively. Beyond housing, many people experiencing homelessness in Ohio face additional challenges like insufficient social support networks and lack of access to legal and health services. Mental health and substance use disorders are prevalent among this population, yet many rural areas lack the necessary healthcare infrastructure to provide effective treatment. Without integrated support services, these individuals remain trapped in a cycle of housing instability and poor health. What role should the government play in balancing the interests of landlords and tenants? How can Ohio accelerate the creation and maintenance of affordable housing? These are vital questions as the state grapples with the ongoing crisis. Recognizing these root causes allows us to better understand the magnitude of the problem. In the following section, we will explore the consequences of homelessness in Ohio, revealing the far-reaching impacts on individuals, families, and communities, and why urgent, coordinated action is essential. The far-reaching consequences of homelessness in Ohio. Homelessness in Ohio does not just affect individuals without shelter, it ripples across society, impacting social cohesion, education, healthcare, economy, and even the state's image. Understanding these consequences is vital to grasping the full scope of this growing crisis. The rise of homeless in Ohio exacerbates social divides, deepening the gap between rich and poor. People experiencing homelessness often face stigma, isolation, and exclusion from community life. This marginalization weakens social bonds and undermines efforts toward a more inclusive society. Families and children bear the brunt of this exclusion, with many children losing stable environments crucial for healthy development. Moreover, immigrant populations and low-income workers, who often lack legal protections, are particularly vulnerable to becoming homeless, highlighting systemic inequalities. Homeless children face severe educational disruptions. Frequent school changes and unstable living conditions contribute to high absenteeism and dropout rates, hindering the development of critical skills and future career opportunities. The instability often pushes some youths towards survival-driven behaviors, including petty theft and other crimes, perpetuating a cycle that traps vulnerable children and teens. Without intervention, these educational setbacks can lead to long-term social and economic disadvantages for an entire generation. The health consequences for the homeless in Ohio are alarming. Overcrowded shelters and emergency rooms strain medical facilities, which must address chronic illnesses that often go untreated due to lack of access to regular care. Homeless individuals suffer disproportionately from chronic diseases, infectious illnesses like tuberculosis and hepatitis, and mental health disorders. The increased demand on emergency services not only overwhelms the healthcare system but also drives up costs, posing a challenge for public health planning. From an economic standpoint, homelessness inflates public expenditures. Governments must allocate significant funds to emergency services, healthcare, social welfare programs, and law enforcement efforts to manage issues arising from homelessness. This financial burden limits resources available for growth initiatives. Additionally, instability in communities affects businesses by reducing a reliable workforce and deterring investment. The cumulative effect slows economic progress and deepens social inequality. Public spaces in cities across Ohio often double as makeshift shelters, altering the urban environment. The visible presence of homeless individuals can negatively affect a city's reputation, reducing its attractiveness to tourists and visitors. Areas with concentrated homelessness may be perceived as unsafe, discouraging tourism and impacting local economies dependent on visitor spending. To counter this, some cities increase security and maintenance costs, placing further strain on municipal budgets. Homelessness in Ohio is not just a housing problem. It is a multifaceted crisis that touches every part of society. Addressing it effectively requires comprehensive strategies that go beyond shelter provision to tackle education, health, economic stability, and social inclusion. How do you think communities can balance compassionate support with maintaining public safety and urban appeal? What role should local governments play in transforming this growing challenge into an opportunity for renewal? Mental health and substance abuse challenges among the homeless in Ohio. Mental health disorders and substance abuse remain critical and intertwined challenges for the homeless in Ohio. Nationally, about 24% of homeless individuals suffer from severe mental illness, while approximately 18% struggle with substance addiction. These figures reflect a widespread crisis that exacerbates the hardships faced by people without stable housing. Importantly, addiction is often a consequence rather than a cause of homelessness. The trauma, instability, and isolation associated with living on the streets or in shelters can drive individuals towards substance use as a coping mechanism. Understanding this dynamic is essential to addressing the root causes and providing effective support. Access to healthcare services for homeless individuals, particularly mental health and addiction treatment, remains uneven and insufficient. Rural areas in Ohio face especially acute shortages of facilities and programs, leaving many without the care they desperately need, even in urban centers. Systemic barriers such as complicated intake procedures, stigma, and lack of coordination among providers create significant obstacles. Efforts to expand outreach and tailor services to the homeless population have had some success, but the scale of the problem demands more comprehensive strategies. Integrated care models that combine housing, mental health support, and addiction treatment show promise in improving outcomes. Still, funding constraints and policy gaps limit their reach. How can Ohio bridge the healthcare access gap for its homeless population? What innovative solutions can ensure mental health and substance abuse services reach those most in need? Addressing these questions is crucial as the state seeks to alleviate the suffering of the homeless in Ohio and break the cycle that traps many in despair. The growing homelessness crisis in Ohio. A troubling forecast. Ohio is facing an increasingly urgent homelessness crisis that shows little sign of easing. Recent reports reveal that the number of homeless individuals in the state continues to climb, driven by a combination of housing shortages, economic pressures, and systemic challenges. According to data from HUD and local agencies, more than 700 people experienced homelessness in Ohio in 2024, marking a steady increase that experts warn could worsen in the coming years if no decisive action is taken. One of the biggest contributors to this growing crisis is the severe shortage of affordable housing. Ohio currently faces a deficit of over 260,000 affordable rental units, making it nearly impossible for low-income families, seniors, and vulnerable individuals to find stable homes. Rising housing costs combined with stagnant wages force many to live on the edge or fall into homelessness altogether. This widening gap between demand and supply in affordable housing is expected to expand unless significant investments and policy reforms are implemented promptly. The homeless in Ohio are far from a uniform group. They include young adults facing family rejection, elderly individuals living on fixed incomes unable to meet rising living expenses, veterans struggling with complicated bureaucratic processes, and single parents juggling childcare with soaring housing costs. As the population grows and economic inequality persists, these vulnerable groups are likely to experience even greater housing instability and increased risk of homelessness. Without swift and comprehensive intervention, Ohio risks seeing homelessness spiral further out of control, placing overwhelming pressure on shelters, social services, and local communities. The situation demands not only expanded affordable housing, but also integrated support services tailored to the complex and diverse needs of those affected. What do you believe are the most urgent and effective steps Ohio should take to curb homelessness? How can local communities, governments, and nonprofits work better together to create lasting solutions? Next, we will explore the pressing issue of homeless children and families, shedding light on a side of this crisis that often remains unseen and demands immediate attention. Policies and debates surrounding solutions to homelessness. Efforts to address homelessness in Ohio reflect broader national debates and contrasting policy approaches. The Biden administration strongly supports the Housing First model, which prioritizes immediate access to stable housing without preconditions such as sobriety or employment. This approach is paired with comprehensive support services, including healthcare, mental health treatment, and job training, aiming to provide long-term stability for the homeless in Ohio. Significant federal funding has been allocated to expand housing vouchers and strengthen partnerships with local agencies to implement this compassionate strategy. In contrast, the Trump administration's policies took a more punitive stance, emphasizing behavioral compliance before offering housing assistance. This meant individuals often had to complete drug rehabilitation or mental health programs prior to qualifying for housing support. Enforcement measures such as anti-camping laws and the establishment of structured encampments were also promoted, aiming to maintain public order. Critics argue these policies criminalized homelessness and ignored the systemic issues driving it, pushing homeless populations into less visible and more precarious conditions. Locally, Ohio's cities faced difficult choices in balancing public safety and humanitarian concerns. Some policies focused on clearing homeless encampments have sparked controversy, with debates over whether enforcement protects communities or further marginalizes vulnerable individuals. Funding remains a contentious issue. While advocates call for increased investment in affordable housing and social services, budget constraints and political resistance often limit the scale and effectiveness of programs. This tension reflects a broader societal divide between prioritizing public security and addressing homelessness with empathy and support. The debate often polarizes public opinion and complicates policy implementation. As Ohio navigates these complex challenges, key questions arise. How can policymakers balance compassion with practical governance? Can the voices and experiences of homeless individuals be better integrated into solution design? In the next section, we will explore successful local programs and community initiatives that demonstrate promising paths forward for combating homelessness in Ohio. Examples of local programs tackling homelessness in Ohio. Ohio has seen a variety of local initiatives aimed at addressing homelessness, each with its own successes and challenges. One of the most promising efforts is the Key to Home Partnership in Columbus. Launched to provide not just housing but comprehensive support, this program has successfully helped over 330 individuals secure stable, permanent housing, beyond just shelter. Participants receive access to vital services such as mental health counseling, job training, and case management, helping them rebuild their lives with greater stability and independence. In Cleveland, the city has taken bold steps with its Home for Every Neighbor initiative. While the program aimed to rehouse 150 people experiencing homelessness, it has managed to provide permanent housing for 47 individuals so far. Despite this progress, Cleveland faces significant hurdles in scaling the program, particularly due to budget constraints and complex policy environments. These financial and bureaucratic challenges limit the capacity to meet the growing need. Recognizing the urgency of the crisis, Columbus increased its budget for homelessness services by $1.4 million in 2025, bringing total funding close to $6 million. This increase reflects the city's commitment to expanding and enhancing resources for homeless individuals, including shelter capacity and supportive services. Still, the demand often outpaces supply, underscoring the need for sustained investment and innovative solutions. These local examples show that coordinated efforts between public agencies, nonprofits, and community stakeholders can make a real difference. However, persistent funding shortages, Regulatory hurdles and political complexities continue to pose barriers. What lessons can other cities learn from Columbus and Cleveland? How can Ohio build on these programs to create statewide solutions? As we consider these successes and challenges, the next focus will be on policy and systemic debates shaping the future of homelessness intervention in Ohio. Ongoing challenges in tackling homelessness in Ohio. Despite various efforts, Ohio continues to face significant challenges in effectively addressing homelessness. One major issue is the frequent budget cuts and unstable funding allocations. Programs designed to support the homeless often rely on short-term grants or fluctuating government budgets, making it difficult to maintain consistent services or plan long-term strategies. This financial uncertainty hinders the ability of organizations to provide sustained housing, healthcare, and social support. Another critical challenge is the increased enforcement and legal measures that sometimes criminalize homelessness. Laws aimed at controlling public spaces, such as anti-camping ordinances, may push homeless individuals out of visible areas but do little to solve the underlying problem. This approach often leads to repeated cycles of displacement and incarceration, further marginalizing vulnerable populations. Compounding these issues is the lack of comprehensive data and a unified tracking system. Without accurate and real-time information about the homeless population, it's difficult to allocate resources effectively or measure the impact of interventions. Fragmented data systems between counties and service providers create gaps that leave many individuals unnoticed and unsupported. Lastly, public opinion and politics will remain divided. The issue of homelessness has become a contentious topic, with some advocating for compassionate, human-centered approaches, while others push for stricter enforcement and limited spending. This polarization complicates policymaking and often results in stalled progress. Given these persistent obstacles, the question remains, how can Ohio build consensus and create sustainable, effective solutions to support its homeless population? Understanding these challenges is crucial as we explore potential paths forward. Proposed solutions to homelessness in Ohio. To effectively combat homelessness in Ohio, sustainable investment in affordable housing is crucial. Expanding the Housing First program, which prioritizes providing immediate, stable housing before addressing other challenges, has proven successful in many communities. Long-term funding and commitment are necessary to scale this approach statewide. Legal support is vital. Strengthening tenant protections and offering legal assistance can help prevent unnecessary evictions, keeping more people housed. Policies supporting eviction prevention can reduce new cases of homelessness. Reforming zoning laws and providing incentives for affordable housing development are essential. Streamlining permitting and offering tax breaks can increase low-cost housing supply. Healthcare services must expand, integrating physical and mental health care tailored to homeless individuals. Accessible, coordinated care improves outcomes and reduces emergency visits. Finally, collaboration among communities, businesses, and government agencies should be enhanced. Partnerships can leverage resources and create comprehensive support networks addressing homelessness from multiple angles. Conclusion. Homelessness in Ohio is more than just numbers. It's about real people facing harsh realities every day. Families, children, seniors, and veterans all deserve safe, stable housing and the chance to rebuild their lives with dignity. But this crisis won't solve itself. It demands compassion, commitment, and bold action from all of us, from policymakers to neighbors. By investing in affordable housing, improving legal protections, and expanding healthcare services, Ohio can create lasting change. If this story touched you, please like, share, and comment below to raise awareness. Your voice matters in pushing for solutions that can transform lives. Together, we can build a community where everyone has a place to call home. Don't let homelessness remain invisible. Join the conversation and be part of the change Ohio needs.